Dr. Diane Hamilton, and she did something that most people we were afraid to conquer. We have Myers-Briggs, we have Ocean, we have all this study, but she took it to the next level. She incorporated how technology is bothering us, involved in our daily way to communicate. We work. Diane, welcome to Ask the Expert. Thank you for being here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on the show, Susan. This is going to be so much fun. I'm looking forward to it.
And you talk about curiosity. And when people says how you ended up being who you are and says, I have two factors. I'm a curious cat and I'm a failure. But you took the first one and you base your studies and your assessment and being curious. Why?
Well, I think it kind of helps to have a little background on how I got to this point. And basically, you mentioned I have a nationally syndicated radio show in the United States, but it's also on all the other outlets because it's a podcast as well. And as I interview a lot of people on there, I get to really learn about some of the most amazing people. You've been on my show. I've had billionaires and Time Magazine's most influential in the world people. I've had Hall of Fame speakers, you name it, from the top CEOs, and all of them have all been super curious. They read everything. They're very interesting. And I also thought that was, really helpful to see what everybody was doing. But I am a professor as well. I do a lot of other things. I have a company where I train people. I teach for 7 to 10 different universities, depending on the year. I've taught more than 1,000 business classes. And what I found was a lot of my students weren't quite as curious as some of the people I interviewed. They were smart, but they just weren't, sometimes they wanted you to give them the fish instead of teach them to fish, in the old saying, and I think that if you can get them that desire to want to learn how to fish, to have that curious mindset, then I think that that's the key to engagement, innovation, productivity, all the issues that we're seeing in the business world. So I set out to write a book on curiosity, but halfway into the book, I'm thinking, well, I can't just write a book about this because there's other books about curiosity. It wasn't enough for me to talk about it or write about it. I wanted to fix it. And the way, for people who really probably could be more curious, I thought it would really help them. So I decided I needed to create an assessment to measure what's keeping them from being curious. And that's what led to the Curiosity Code Index that took me years to come up with all the right questions. And then that's what led to all these issues that we're going to talk about, that I found are the 4 factors that inhibit curiosity, which are fear, assumptions, technology, and environment, or the acronym of FATE. So basically, that is how I got involved in curiosity and why I find it so fascinating.
Diane, what do you think this new generation, or old generation, you please correct me if I'm wrong, they stop being curious? Because I can talk with friends of mine who are in the 40s, 60s, and 50s, and they're really curious. They read everything out there. Do you think the new generation, having so overwhelmed technology, kill their curiosity because they can Google everything? So what am I going to be curious if I need it? What do you think is killing curiosity?
Well, there's a couple good points in there. First of all, we've seen research that generationally, Gen Y, which is the millennials, tend to be a little more curious than other generations, than like Gen Z, the newer generation. So I don't know if it's going to continue to be less and less per generation as it goes down the line, but we do know that around age 5, everybody starts to decline in their level of curiosity. You have a peak and then you just tank out as you get older. I think that technology is an impactor, of course. I think a lot of people over-rely or under-rely on it. I think that as I looked at all these 4 factors that I mentioned, your environment is a huge influencer. You have teachers who they have to teach to the test. They have curriculum. They have 35 other kids or whatever it is, So once we get into school, no matter what generation you're in, schools, it's kind of challenging to keep up with all the why questions as a professor, as a teacher. So we find that there's a number of factors. And when it comes to technology specifically, a lot of people in the younger generations do rely heavily on asking questions of their Echo device or of their, their phones or different Googling things and that type of thing. And then they don't get the foundational reasoning behind things. I mean, imagine if you never were taught math, but everything was always a calculator, and you might have been a great mathematician had you explored all the value, behind learning all that math, and it might be your passion. And it's the same thing with a lot of other things that maybe technology is doing for us. So I'm not saying technology is bad. I have an Echo, I've got iPads, I've got every kind of thing you can imagine in my house. But there's got to be times where you figure out, well, if my computer crashes, I want to fix it. I want to know why. And I want to be able to understand the reasoning of how this works. I want to know the answer. Of course, maybe I get it quickly from my Echo, but I would like to know what the foundation is behind it. But for a lot of older people, they're fearful of technology, and they might not rely on it as much, but they could get a lot more from it, and they could develop their curiosity if they utilized it in more ways, because we have more access to everything. The world's getting smaller and flatter, and we actually can connect to things that we never connected to before. So it's a balance of learning to be able to take the most advantage of it is what I'd like to see.
How technology, since this the first topic we start talking, how technology affect and favor and pros and cons in under the Curiosity Index?
Well, in all of the questions on the Curiosity Code Index, there's 36 questions. So each of the 4 factors has 9 questions associated with each of those factors. So we look at what kinds of things with technology, if maybe some people just, they're overwhelmed by it, or maybe they don't want to figure it out from the beginning, or somebody just created bought a whole new system at work. They just learned it, and now they're giving them something new, and then they find that annoying, or whatever it is. There's different factors within each of the there's sub-factors within each of the factors. So the reason I think it's really important to take an assessment like that is because you look at these 9 questions under each area and you go, okay, I never really thought about it, but that's why I'm avoiding technology, or that's why I'm overutilizing technology. And I think the whole basis of that is to get a dialogue going in your mind, because once you recognize that something's impacting you, because you don't know what you don't know until it's pointed out to you, right? And once you see this, you go, oh, okay, maybe I'll not use so much technology in this day of the week and set up a goal. You know what I mean? Like, this is my no technology day, and I'm going to try and find out the reasoning behind all these things that I've had it figure out for me up until this point. Or this is my day to learn about this technology that I've never learned about because I avoided it because in my mind I thought it'd be too challenging and a waste of my time or data overload or whatever I've put in my head about this. So the whole point is we're trying to get a very innovative workplace, right? And we know we want to do that. We know AI is going to take over a lot of these jobs. And as they do that, we want to ask ourselves all these things that what could we be better aligned to do? And that might mean we might be much more interested in technology-based jobs had we only explored them, but because we've put these thoughts in our head that it's something we don't want, this is just opening up the horizon for us.
Diane, let's do this. We talk about technology, we have fear, assumption, and environment. We're going to do 3 more segments. But I would say, if you think that your job is taken by Tinder, remember, after you swipe right or left, you still need to have human behavioral soft skills to continue the relationship. So instead to be afraid of AI, take it as a friend, take it as a compliment, learn how to work with and see how afraid you are of technology and why.
It's definitely, I mean, there's technology you get like, oh, I can't live without this, or well, I don't want the next thing because I've learned to love this thing. And, and think you'd have a flip phone. Well, that was great at the time. But now, don't you want the iPhone or the next thing or the next thing? So you just have to be realized. It's a time where you can't go with status quo thinking. And that's what all this is about, is status quo thinking is the death of organizations. That's what happened to Blockbuster. That's what happened to Kodak. They did everything based on what worked in the past. And to quote Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there. And just because you like something in the past, that's great. You embraced it, but there's going to be something better in the future, and something that it's just going to take an open mind for that.
Dr. Diane Hamilton, thank you very much. See you next one. And I want to talk about fear.